Okay, let's see how you feel in 5 minutes. Good evening. I'm Joe Mosca, former Dean of the Batante College of Health and Human Services and a member of the James and Coralie Centofanti Foundation Distribution Committee. On behalf of Youngstown State University, I welcome you all to tonight's symposium. Before we move into the symposium, I want to acknowledge our donor, the James and Coralie Centofanti Charitable Foundation. The generosity of the foundation has made a tremendous impact on our university and our community. Present tonight from the Centofanti Foundation's Distribution Committee are Mark Graham, Committee Chair, Carol Potter, and Kelly Centofanti, members. Please stand and be acknowledged. The foundation has provided significant giving to the university. Over the last 12 years, financial support has exceeded $2.75 million. Notably, the foundation has provided critical funding for academic scholarships to students in financial need, broad support for veteran student services, the naming and accompanying program endowment of the James and Coralie Centofanti School of Nursing, and of course, the establishment and sustenance of the Centofanti Symposium, which was initiated in 2012. In addition, the Centofanti Foundation has provided or committed over $2.5 million to our community. So it's been really important in our area. Please join me in thanking the Centofanti Foundation for its magnanimous support to Youngstown State, our community, and to this symposium. The Centofanti Symposium is a medium for bringing nationally and internationally renowned speakers to Youngstown. Beyond providing knowledge and entertainment, a primary goal of the symposium is to raise awareness of the difficulties and challenges facing vulnerable groups in our society, while at the same time promoting a spirit of shared responsibility and common concern for human dignity. Before I say a few things about our speaker, Steven Van Zandt, I want to let you know that tonight's presentation will be moderated by Cornell Bogdan, one of Youngstown's own. He is a blues aficionado and a veteran radio host. And now a little bit about our speaker. Steven Van Zandt is an award-winning musician, performer, songwriter, arranger, producer, actor, director, DJ, activist, historian, teacher, and he's a New York Times best-selling author. He's also a member of the New Jersey Hall of Fame and our own Rock and Roll Hall of Fame in Cleveland. Stevie helped to create the Jersey Shore sound with the Asbury Jukes, became a founding member of Bruce Springsteen's E Street Band, and went on to become a successful solo artist. In 1985, Stevie formed Artists United Against Apartheid and wrote Sun City, a song featuring over 50 major recording artists protesting the apartheid system in South Africa. Ultimately, it led to Nelson Mandela being freed only a few years later. He has twice been honored by the United Nations for his political activism. Stevie co-starred in all 7 seasons of The Sopranos, playing Silvio Dante, a character that he created. He starred in, co-wrote, produced, and provided the music supervision for the award-winning series Lilyhammer, which was the first original programming for Netflix. In 2001, Stevie launched Little Steven's Underground Garage, the most successful syndicated rock music radio show in the past 50 years. He also created the first 2 channels of original content on Sirius XM, The Underground Garage and Outlaw Country. In 2006, he began his record label, Wicked Cool Records. In 2013, Stevie created the Rock and Soul Forever Foundation and has developed a curriculum called teachrock.org, which has reached over 1 million students. In 2021, he released his critically acclaimed memoir, Unrequited Infatuations, a New York Times bestseller, and is also the star of the Grammy-nominated HBO documentary, Steven Van Zandt, Disciple. So please welcome Steven Van Zandt.
Love you, man. Wow. I got to get to Youngstown more often, right? I want to thank the James and Carly Centofanti Foundation for inviting me, and of course the great Youngstown University, Jackie and everybody here. Very proud to support the Centofanti Foundation's work. They do terrific work. Let's hear it for them, please. What a beautiful building, by the way. Amazing. Nobody starts off life wanting to be an activist. It's not really a job description. All I wanted to do was play rock and roll and try and make a living doing that, which was an impossible dream back then. And, you tend to have tunnel vision. I didn't pay much attention in school. All I cared about was getting to band rehearsal and figuring out a way to try and make a living doing this thing. It was pretty new at the time. And then the next thing you know, after a mere, 15 years of work, we finally broke through, and we actually made it on the E Street Band's 5th album, The River, broke through, and we were starting to tour Europe for the first time, really. And it was a fascinating experience just seeing people worldwide who didn't particularly speak English, singing every single word back to you. It was really a revelation, realizing how music really is the international common language, which would play a big role in my education curriculum, which I'll get to in a minute. But so it was on that that tour over there that we went through Checkpoint Charlie, me and Bruce, one day just to see when the wall was still up, what was it like over there in East Berlin, and that was a bit of a shock. And then right after that, I was in one of the parks, and a kid came up to me and asked me why I was putting missiles in his country. And that was not a question I was expecting, and I didn't really understand it. I said, I have no idea what you're talking about. I'm over here to, play guitar. I'm not putting missiles anywhere. And the question just lingered in my head for weeks. I don't know why. It just like was one of those strange things, and it just, you know, I had this epiphany finally. You know, oh my God, he's not looking at me like a rock and roll guy or, you know, any kind of Republican or Democrat or anything else. He's looking at me as an American. And the shock of that would completely change my life. Because all of a sudden I said, well, if I'm an American, I wonder what obligations go with that, you know? What responsibilities go with that? It was just the timing of it, because being successful for the first time, really, you know, the tunnel vision started to fade, and you start looking around and realizing, you know, what is my place in the world? And thoughts that had never occurred to you before. So I went home and started reading books for the first time, and I'd grown up with a Goldwater Republican ex-Marine father, so I know all about the conservative movement. And we were taught, of course, you know, that America was doing the right thing worldwide, always. And then reading books, I realized that was not exactly the case. We were occasionally on the wrong side of a few things, and that really bothered me. So at the same time, I was offered a solo deal. And growing up, you know, you had to have a very, very distinct identity in the 60s, right into the 70s, really. You know, every single band, every single artist was very, very distinctive. Things weren't nearly as homogenized as they are these days. So I was searching for, you know, if I was going to make a solo career, what would that be? And so as I got deeper and deeper into this subject of international liberation politics, I realized, well, that'll be my thing. I'll be the political guy, you know. There had been occasional political records here and there, of course, from For What It's Worth, Steve Stills and Buffalo Springfield, to you know, Volunteers of America from Jefferson Airplane, and most notably Ohio, of course, from Neil Young and Crosby, Stills, Nash and Young. You know, so occasionally there would be a political song, but nobody was doing it full time. And I decided, well, that'll be my identity, since no one else is really doing that. And you know, I would study the conflicts. I would start off by studying the conflicts of our international foreign policy since World War II, and look at the conflicts and study conflict resolution, and basically become an artist journalist. You know, I would look at a situation, study it, and then turn it into a story, because our art form is really storytelling. So you know, you communicate emotional information in songwriting, and so that's what I did. And one of those conflicts was in South Africa. I couldn't find out much about it, so I went down there twice to do the research, and it just wasn't that big an issue in America at the time. The entire apartheid regime down there, you know, it was pretty big in Europe, but in America, not so much. So I couldn't find out much, and I went down there, and you know, I thought it was worth pursuing, because it was kind of an exaggeration of our own racial problems here. We had only passed the civil rights legislation in '64, and Voting Act in '65, Housing Act in '68. So this is only, you know, a few years later. And so you know, I wasn't going down there with any feeling of superiority. I just felt like it was just an issue that needed to be looked at. So it was on those trips that, as I'm doing the research, one day I'm in a taxi, And a black guy steps off the curb, and the white driver swerved to try and hit him for sport. And it was at that moment, really, when I went from being an artist journalist to artist journalist activist, because it was so shocking to me. I realized that there's nothing that can be reformed here. This government has just got to go, you know. So you sit down and you say, okay, well, how do I take down a government? You know, I'm a half a hippie guitar player, not exactly in my resume. Because I felt we had to get rid of the government and get Mandela out of jail while he was still alive. And I looked at it and I saw that the United Nations had established a boycott already, and the sports boycott was working very well. And I knew the economic boycott was going to be the home run that would cut the banks off, and they would have to let Mandela out of jail, and they would have to turn into a democracy. So in between the sports boycott and the economic boycott was the cultural boycott, and that's what we focused on. And I used the Sun City Resort as an example of it. The challenge was going to be, in the end, we knew there would be economic legislation, and we knew at the time Ronald Reagan was going to veto it because Ronald Reagan and Margaret Thatcher in the UK and Helmut Kohl in Germany were all supporting the apartheid regime of South Africa. And Ronald Reagan could not have been more popular at the time. He just was very, very, very big. And so the challenge was going to have to be to override one of his vetoes. It was almost impossible. So we had to raise a lot of consciousness to do that. So we got a bunch of artists together, and in the end, we did manage to miraculously override that veto that inevitably came. And and the banks cut them off, and they had to release Mandela. And that was a very rare happy ending. In that research for South Africa, I realized that they'd copied basically their homeland policy, as they called it, from studying our Native American reservations. So that led me into the Native American world. Even though I was studying international liberation politics, I realized the Native American tribes and nations were, in fact, by treaty, independent nations. So they were technically a part of our foreign policy, and that led me to an entirely new subject, which involved another political prisoner named Leonard Peltier, and it was part of an unfortunate situation back then. I am very much a supporter of law enforcement. I identify as a independent law and order liberal, and I give the biggest fundraiser in New York City for two NYPD charities every year, and I support the modern FBI very much so. But back then, the Hoover FBI was a very, very different animal, and they were going after everybody, regardless of legality. They were after to destroy the American Indian movement. They were trying to destroy the Black Panthers, Cesar Chavez farm workers. They were trying to stop women's liberation. They were trying to stop civil rights, right? It was just a ridiculous, exaggerated form of paranoia coming from J. Edgar Hoover. So part of that was accusing Leonard Peltier of killing 2 FBI agents. There was a firefight every single day out there in the Midwest. 61 Indians had been killed already, and the FBI came in on the wrong side of it. And one day, 2 FBI wandered into the wrong place at the wrong time, not identifying themselves, and they were killed. They arrested 3 Indians immediately. and 2 of them got off because there was no evidence whatsoever. So they needed a scapegoat, and they picked Leonard Peltier, who went into jail in 1975 or so. I got involved in his case in the late 80s. When I studied the case, there wasn't not one shred of evidence keeping him in jail. It was an absolute miscarriage of justice. It was terrible. And I did a song and a video and worked on it ever since. That came out in 1989. And we just got him out of jail last week. Mandela only took 5 years. Peltier took me 37 years and 6 presidents. And he was in jail for 50 years. Terrible. But those kind of things, happened just as a result of trying to express the voices of people that maybe were not being heard. In the case of South Africa, in the case of Native America, it felt like a useful way to use one's music and career. I don't feel that everybody needs to do that necessarily. I really don't. I think there's a place for pure entertainment in our world, more needed than ever these days, I think. But if you can find a way to actually say something that's going to educate somebody or provide a little insight as to a situation that they may not have noticed, I think that I found that to be quite satisfying at the time. And I did it through 5 albums in the 80s, and eventually led to looking at the situation right now with this generation of kids coming up. The music teachers of America came to me, I don't know now, 15, 20 years ago, and said that all of the arts classes had been cut in public education because of the No Child Left Behind legislation. And it was sort of a new world to me. It wasn't something I was thinking about. But they said, do me a favor, go down into Washington, D.C., see what you can find out. And I spoke to Teddy Kennedy at the time and Mitch McConnell, and they said, yeah, it was sort of a, unintended consequence that this No Child Left Behind legislation actually did eliminate all of the arts classes, and it wasn't going to get fixed. So I came back to the music teachers. I said, listen, I got good news, bad news. We're not going to put instruments in kids' hands for a while, maybe never again. But I have an idea to do a history class and use music just to sort of keep the arts in the DNA of the public education system, because I feel that that's extraordinarily important. We're the only country in the world that thinks art is a luxury. It is not. It is an absolute essential part of the quality of our lives, and so I said, let's teach a course. Let's teach history through music. We can make it cross-curricular. It can be taught in music class, English class, social studies, etc. And we can make it flexible enough to work in every single grade level. Let's just provide teachers with the tools that they could use to basically form their own way of teaching it, but satisfying all of the necessary state requirements. I didn't want it to be an after-school class or something extra. In fact, I didn't want the arts to be extra at all. I wanted to integrate the arts into science, technology, math. The STEM, what they call STEM, the STEM curriculum, science, technology, engineering, and math. Our goal was to turn STEM into STEAM by adding the A of the arts. And that's what we've been doing. Yeah. So I mean, we now have just it's been enormously successful, and I kind of switched my political energies, which in the '80s was sort of necessary because a lot of the bad stuff was going on behind the scenes and you didn't know it. Now everything is quite obvious. There's no real reason to talk about it anymore, So my energies have gone to that, to moving towards, let's try and find a new way to communicate with this generation, which is very, very different than ours. They're faster than us, they're smarter than us. And they need a reason to be in that classroom because they can get any answer they want to in 30 seconds on their device. And it requires not just curation, but giving them a practical reason to be there. And so we started something just called, teaching in the present tense. In other words, giving them something they can use now, because this generation is all about right now. And we found that by going to them, rather than dragging them to our old methodology, let's go to them and see what they're thinking and work on their turf where they're comfortable. And we start with something we called, tracing it back. We just ask them who they're listening to. They thank God they all still listen to music. So, they may not be buying it anymore, unfortunately, but they are listening, which is good. And so we figured out, let's use that. We ask them who are they listening to, and they may say, are we listening to Beyonce? And we say, well, Beyonce comes from a woman named Aretha Franklin, and she comes from a place called Detroit. We talk about that, and she comes from gospel church. We talk about that a little bit, and was involved with civil rights. We talk about that, and they stay interested because this is something that they have brought up, and it's in their world, on their turf, and that's been very, very successful. That entire concept of using examples through music to teach history, and all of the disciplines. And then lately, in the last year or two, we've now taken it one step further. We realized not only did we need to change the content communication, the actual methodology of it, but we also needed to prepare kids to actually be educated, which we didn't see coming. It was a bit of a surprise to all of us, but we realized, there's a dysfunction going on right now, an anxiety with this generation that has never happened before, a very, very sort of desperate alienation going on, loneliness. There's an increasing suicide. It's a remarkable sort of phenomenon that needed to be addressed. So we started something called a Harmony program that we're doing in the morning, right in homeroom, before they even get to class. And it sounds silly, it sounds ridiculously obvious and simple, but we say, put the devices away, and we sit in a circle, the Native American circle, and we sort of have them talk to each other, talk to whoever's next to them, and just talk about what's going on at home. What do you want to be when you grow up? What's your favorite records, movies, whatever. Nothing specific, just talking, looking eye to eye, And it's having this remarkable effect. The teachers are coming to us saying this is like completely changing what's going on. I mean, the kid might be shy, or it might be an immigrant kid, or it might be somebody from out of state or out of town. And suddenly they're going into class now with a new friend or two. And it changes the entire way that they are relating to the very education process. So, we just keep learning about these things and applying them. We can do it very quickly these days. Whenever we learn, whatever a teacher tells us something that they need, we can do it immediately and turn that right around. So that's been, what we've been doing lately, these last few years, and we're now in every single state. I think it's over 75,000 teachers are teaching it and having great success with it. So you sort of move to where you can be useful. I mean, I wrote my book hoping that it would be useful. When the guys wanted to do the documentary on me, I said, please, make it about something bigger than me, because my story is bigger than me. And I happen to be the guy sort of, wandering through this stuff. But, the actual the impact of what you need to do these days is a bigger story. And you have to, we have to come to grips with that. And I'm very happy that that's how the book was received and how the documentary has been received. I mean, I'm just one of the narrators just kind of telling a story. I didn't want it to be some ego trip, It's all about me. It's, and they honored that. I mean, they really did a terrific job with it. So we continue to learn and try and do what we can do. But I think as an artist, our most important job, our first job maybe, is to be useful. And that's what I suggest when I do my master classes with the kids. It may be acting classes, it may be music, songwriting, whatever it is. All I suggest is, do whatever you do with a purpose. Write with a purpose, live with a purpose, and try and be useful, because what else can we do, right? What else matters? So, thank you again. Thank you.
Steven! Very nice, man. Very nice. I've been honored to do a number of these things, and it's always very flattering, and usually you get to see what the artist wants when they come to town. Steve Van Zandt asked for one thing: a chair turned backwards.
And water.
Oh, yeah, water.
I'm a diva.
Yeah, a diva, a true diva. Stephen, let's go to the dark part of your life first, if you don't mind.
Good.
You were in a very dark place after leaving the E Street Band before the massive success of Born in the USA, but this only made you even more dedicated, almost, I guess the word would be crazed, to your activism. And it took it up another notch, didn't it?
Well, yeah, at a certain moment, I realized I had blown my life.
Sorry.
And he's laughing. I'm glad you're getting a kick out of this. After 15 years of work, literally, we finally are getting paid. We didn't make any money till The River, which is in 1980.
Right. Right.
I've been playing in various bands since '65. So it was a really, weird time to leave. We finally breaking through, and it just kind of hit me one day. I said, I think my life's over. So it was helpful because I was going into some dangerous situations at that point for research in South Africa. I talk about it in the book in great detail, but it made me quite fearless because I didn't care if I lived or died at that point, which really is liberating, it's surprisingly liberating.
Well, when you're greeted with machetes in South Africa, that was beautiful.
Yeah,
what a welcome.
Yeah. I was in with the real hardcore guys who felt I was violating the boycott just by being there.
Right.
And I tried to explain to them, well, I did explain to them, I said, listen, where I come from, you need firsthand information. I'm going to go back, I'm on your side, so put that machete away. But the tricky thing was, of course, that, I'm in Soweto where there's no electricity. And I said to them, you're not going to win this war, killing people and shooting up, radio stations and blowing up TVs, stations. And they were like, well, how are we going to win the war then, I said, I'm going to win the war on TV, And,
How many folks were you talking to at this time?
There's 6 or 8 of them there, yeah.
With machetes?
Yeah.
And
they're debating whether to kill me or not. Because I violated the boycott by being there.
man, did you make a mistake? If you don't mind me saying.
But I didn't care.
Yeah,
so,
right.
They knew there was. The government was very clever at that time.
Yeah.
They'd send spies out, but I think my appearance probably saved my life because they were like, the government's tricky, but not this tricky. Yeah. That's a bit much, even for the South African government. So, and in the end, they bought it. They let me. I just said, give me 6 months and try to, kill fewer people if you can do that.
If you can do that.
You know what I mean? And just kind of take it easy for a minute. Because, this government, they want you to pick up guns. They want you to do that stuff because they know how to fight that. But they can't fight what I'm going to do, which is just exposing what's going on to the people who matter, which the other worldwide countries that are supporting the South African regime. So I got lucky there, and I had already met with the major parties before that. I had met with Mandela's party, the ANC, and I had met with the rival PAC, the two big revolutionary parties who had endorsed my idea. So I laid that on them, and that made them pause because, ultimately they're all working for Mandela. Ultimately, you know what I mean? And so they had to stop and respect that.
Well, you were the research guy. You go over the enemy lines. You get all of the information. Then you bring it back, and then you have to convince folks, hey, here's a good idea, guys. We're going to do this song because I went over and saw all this, and now you have to explain it. And then you have to get artists involved. Yep. And, I'm looking at the list. Bruce, of course, Dylan was involved, Bono, Run DMC, Joey Ramone. How did you sell everybody?
Well, you had to sell it a little bit.
Yeah.
Because, like I said, it wasn't really an issue here.
It wasn't a top-of-mind awareness to anybody.
No. And I just, one by one, you explained it to them. And they went along with it. I think Arthur Baker, I was with 4 of us doing it. Me, Danny Schechter, Hart Perry, and Arthur Baker. And, Arthur Baker was a very respected producer at the time. And was a lot of guys on the record were his phone book.
Okay.
So he was very, very helpful. And we just got lucky, the luckiest of all the artists was really Miles Davis, who, who didn't get involved in anything.
Wow.
Yeah. When he walked in, I was like, now I know we got something, And luckily they filmed it. It's in the documentary. Yeah. But he was the only one you didn't have to convince. He knew about it, and he was like, this is the one I want to do. Wow. Whatever, feeding people is nice, yeah. But these guys got to be brought down. And so that was the idea. Moving from social concerns to political concerns was a leap. Nobody minds you feeding people in Africa. You can do that all day long.
Exactly.
And it's wonderful and it's important. Yep. But you start naming names and pointing your finger, and we mentioned Ronald Reagan in the song,
I remember it well, man.
That makes people nervous. Now you're making people nervous. So.
Tell me about the impact that Nelson Mandela had on your life?
Well, it was very
Because
big.
I can honestly say that we have a packed house in here. I'm pretty sure that no one has met Nelson Mandela in this room. You know, what was that? What was that like, Steve? The first time you sat down with him?
Yeah, I only met him two times, really. Once when we got him out of jail with the Wembley
Yeah.
concert, and then when he came to the Tribeca Grill, where we had a fundraiser for him.
So it was only twice?
Yeah.
Yeah, okay.
Yeah. He was moving around, and I was doing other things. And I tend to do when I do something, I tend to do it, and then once it's done, I tend to move on. You know what I mean? And that was me and Bobby De Niro and Spike Lee and Eddie Murphy had a fundraiser. He came down, and I've never met anybody quite like him. Muhammad Ali was close, but he had an aura that was palpable. It was amazing.
Mm-hmm.
What I would picture the religious leaders of the past had something, that kind of ultra charisma, and he just was, a warm, wonderful guy. And when we then subsequently we went down to play South Africa with the E Street Band
Right.
a couple tours ago. And I met with the ANC, the African National Congress, his party.
Okay.
Who were thanking me for getting him out, and they said, we're really glad you got him out when you did. Turns out that they were chopping up drugs and putting it in his food the last year.
Oh my God.
To try and disintegrate his brain, So thinking that when he did get released, because they were worried about a bloodbath, and they were worried with good reason, and they were very smart to even keep him alive.
Yeah.
If he had died in prison, forget it. It would have been the bloodbath of all time. I mean, the Afrikaner were outnumbered. I don't know what, 20, 30, 40 to 1,
Yeah.
50 to 1. So in the end, it was just an amazing, peaceful transition. I mean, miraculous. Yeah.
You're doing the Sun City Project, your involvement with apartheid, and the more and more Steve Van Zandt got involved, the more record labels and record companies were saying, let's stay the hell away from that guy. And I've been in radio for a long time, and I remember some of the memos, like, should we really be playing Sun City? Should we really be doing this? Is it making a statement about wherever we work? That had to piss you off. I mean, here's a guy that has been doing it the right way for a long time, and all of a sudden you were becoming public enemy number one.
Well, in those days, a lot of things pissed me off. I was a pissed off Mama Jama. That's how you get things done, man.
It's true.
You gotta be
That is true.
You gotta be pissed off enough.
Youngstown knows.
But but you're right. Radio wouldn't play it. It was too white for black radio and too black for white radio. How ironic is that, right? We're making a statement about racism.
I just want you to know, from the old days of CD 106 The Wolf, we played it. But go ahead, Stephen.
But thank God we did Jonathan Demme and those guys did the video, because that's how people really heard the song.
Sure.
And I had to, at the time, MTV was going through their own situation, the racial situation.
Yeah.
They weren't, right? They weren't playing any black people on MTV. And it's hard to imagine, right?
Yeah, I know it. I know it.
I mean, because it turned around so quick. So I met with them and I said, listen, I can solve your problems with one video. I got more black people in this video than, you're going to need all year long, And
you're going to meet the entire year's worth right here. One video.
And luckily they did it. They put it on, because that's how people saw it. That and BET, the Black Entertainment Network. But that's how people heard it, because very, very few radio stations would play it. you know, and it worked, man. We were able to raise enough consciousness, and Bill Bradley, Senator Bradley from Jersey, brought me down to speak at the Senate, and in the end, just to show you how different the Republican Party is now, we overrode that veto with Republican votes.
Yes, you did.
And yeah, that's how you had to do it. You had to do it. Yeah.
Yep. Yes, you did.
Yeah.
Yes, you did.
Yeah.
You believe rock and roll is the greatest tool for social change that there ever has been. Do you still believe that? And I want to tell you about something that really changed my life. As a student at Youngstown State University, I started a radio station on campus called, and it was before you, it was called The Underground Sound, okay? And I got this album in called Men Without Women. And I'm sorry, Youngstown State, we got 2 copies in like 40 years ago, and I stole one. And it's still, and I'm sure it'll be some kind of invoice. But you know something? I got this album lying in a bed of fire inside of me, under the gun, Princess of Little Italy, Angel Eyes, Forever. Stephen, I want you to know, as a young man in my youth, this album changed me, man.
Wow.
It changed me. And I'm sure there's a lot of people in here that agree, Men Without Women. And you want to talk about winning people over one at a time. I know you won over Youngstown with this, and it was just the arrangements, and there was nothing social, and there was nothing major behind the scenes, no political push. It was just a record that you listened to from start to finish. There was no, let's listen to song number 2. Let's listen to, you listened to it from start to finish. It was an album.
Yeah, that's what we grew up with,
Yeah, man.
We grew up really, and that was important to us. We would spend days sequencing an album.
Yeah.
To make sure that it played that way, One song went into the other in a certain way that would keep you listening, So that was intentional. I mean, that was important to us in those days. Still is to me.
Well,
but,
yeah, exactly. Yeah. Buy albums. Is it still a major push for social change? Do you still think rock and roll still has that?
It's not the same, okay? Yeah. Let's be honest. We couldn't do it. We couldn't do this Sun City thing today. Mm-hmm. Couldn't happen. Mm-hmm. But it's still a wonderful communication. I mean, like I said, we're using it now in our education curriculum.
Sure.
Teach rock. But rock and roll is no longer, fashionable. It's no longer, when the Beatles came, when the British invasion came in '64, they didn't just turn us wannabe musicians into a band culture. They turned the entire culture into a band culture.
Yeah.
So if you went out at night, you went to the drive-in theater, okay, or you went to see a band.
Yeah.
I mean, that's what everybody did. I'm sure it was the same in Youngstown as it was in New Jersey, we didn't have the distractions, of course, of today. We had 3 TV channels, that was it, and pinball machines, So, and in the end, I mean, it's not quite the same now. I mean, it's not that mass shared experience anymore.
Sure.
Okay? I mean, rock and roll records just don't sell at all. I mean, they're not, I don't remember the last time a hit single could be even categorized as rock.
Yeah,
You know what I mean?
right,
I mean, you got to go back decades.
You're right.
So it was a very, very different time. We were lucky to grow up when we did. It was, I call it a Renaissance period. I mean, when the greatest art being made, it's also the most commercial. You are in a Renaissance. and that's what we grew up with, which was meaningful in lots of ways, but one of which being the rock era, which I clocked from 65 to 95, that 30-year period where rock really ruled, and you really could communicate worldwide with rock at that time. But it was a wonderful time in many other ways as well. Just the fact that greatness was commercial, if you can imagine such a thing. Okay, I talk about greatness all the time in all my master classes and speeches, and I spent my entire life seeking greatness, searching it out, supporting it when I find it, and trying to achieve it myself, because of those high standards that got set in the 60s. When you went home to write a song, you didn't write a song thinking I'm going to copy the song I just heard on the radio.
Right.
You went home saying, I need to write a great song, knowing that a great song would be a hit, because greatness was commercial, and that's gone. Okay, that's gone, and that's one of the big challenges of young people today. They got to deal with, they got to deal with the extraordinary mediocrity we're all drowning in right now. You have to rise above the mediocrity. And they got so many distractions to fight. And as I say, greatness is not born. I know greatness. I've seen it. I've touched it. I know great people. None of them were born great. Okay, greatness is developed. It's an extremely important concept, which right now is almost impossible because nobody has time to do anything. Right? We're getting much more input than we can handle. And this is before AI gets crazy.
Oh, let's
okay?
not even, yeah,
I
let's
can't
not
imagine
go
what's
there.
coming next.
Yeah.
But, we're already getting too much input. We can't absorb it, It's causing anxiety in the kids, And you don't have time to develop anything. Even our businesses. The reason why, how many great TV shows are there on? How many great records do you hear? Fewer and fewer and fewer. Why? Because the CFOs have taken over the world. Okay, that's why. The guy that used to do your taxes once a year, okay, come out for an hour, do your taxes. Now he's running all the companies, okay, and that's the problem. That's a problem, So, because all they know is
He's right.
I'm not, all they know is the next fiscal quarter.
Yeah.
Right. That's all that matters.
Yeah.
Right?
Yeah.
The next fiscal quarter. Well, can you imagine if we thought about that, 100 years ago?
Yeah.
There'd be no highways. There'd be no, you'd be in a stagecoach, and I mean, you can't. We have to somehow break out of this next fiscal quarter consciousness, and time deficit disorder. We're all suffering from.
Time deficit disorder.
Because we're not going to ever develop anything great again if we don't spend the time on it. You're going to spend some time on it.
I'm suffering from time deficit disorder. I like that.
Right?
There's got to be a prescription for it, right?
I don't know. I just made it up. I don't know.
Yeah. Steven, am I wrong in thinking that artists of today, popular artists today, whether it's country, rock, blues, whatever you like, I really think that they want to be involved. I think deep down inside they want to be involved, but management says, don't go the little Steven route, or watch how deep in you go. And I'm sure you have talked to artists who have told you that. Steven, I love this cause, I love that cause, but man, it might kill my career.
Well, and that's true. I mean, let's be honest.
Yeah.
But you got to do what you got to do. I mean, you're a citizen first, and those cliches about show business are all true, right?
Yeah.
Don't talk about politics or religion.
Right.
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 Because
say it.
because you're going to piss off somebody.
Yeah.
Right. And all that is true.
Yeah.
So you have to decide yourself. If you need to say something, then you should say it.
Right.
In order to sleep at night, right? But at the same time, I never criticize those who choose not to. I really don't. People say, oh, all he does is entertain people and make people laugh, some comedian or something,
Right.
And I'm like, you know what, man, we need that. We
Yeah,
need that
we
just
do.
as much, man, So don't ever put them down, that's important too. It's just so much harder to get an agreement on anything these days. You know what I mean? We're so divisive now. Anything you want to raise an issue, whatever issue you want to raise, gets politicized, left or right, Republican, Democrat, almost immediately. And so it makes everything so much harder now to have just a simple conversation that is logical and reasonable and common sense. You know what I mean?
Amen.
I mean, it's just how it is.
Yeah. Very well said. There is Miami Steve. There is Little Steven. There is Frank the Fixer from Lilyhammer. There is Silvio Dante from The Sopranos. I know you have created a lot of these characters, a lot of these personas, I should say. How do you jump from one to another? How did you make Frank the Fixer different from Silvio? How did you make Miami Steve different from Little Steven? How is Steve Van Zandt find his place in all of this?
Good question. I'm schizophrenic,
Remember that Ian Hunter album, You're Never Alone with the Schizophrenic? But
there's you gotta define, the different characters, and they're different for a reason. They have different names for a reason. They have different sides of your personality. I mean, the trickier ones with my gangsters, because they look the same.
Yeah.
They sound the same. But
they're so different, though.
But they're very different.
Yeah,
They're very
yeah.
different. Silvio, very conservative and shut down, unless he's at his daughter's soccer game or a card game. But Silvio mostly he's there to protect the boss. Watch the boss's back, because the boss is crazy. Right. Because Tony Soprano could do something nutty.
Go off at any time.
Yeah.
Right.
So Silvio had to be the guy watching his back. He's the only character on that show that did not want to be the boss. All he cared about was taking care of Jimmy, Tony Soprano. Frankie the Fixer, he is a boss. He's the crazy one. He's more like Tony Soprano than Silvio. And the circumstance was so different because the ultimate fish out of water. You drop a gangster into Norway at the time where there was no crime at the time.
What a concept. Seriously.
And that concept was not mine. It was the husband and wife that thought it up, and I became a co-writer with them. But it was a brilliant concept, and especially at the time, which is it's amazing how much things have changed now, just in the last 15 years. When I got to Scandinavia in the early '80s, there was no penal system. They had no crime. I mean, it was unbelievable, And even
Is
as
that
late,
true?
yeah, and even as late as Lilyhammer, there was still very, very, very little crime, and unfortunately, it's a bigger issue than we can talk about now. But we did an episode on immigration, and the key to immigration is integration and assimilation. That is the key, And anytime that does not happen, you got a problem. Yeah. And you're not doing anybody any favors by ghettoizing them. And they don't speak the language. There's no place to work, and you got problems. And that's what's now happened all through Scandinavia. Big problems.
Okay.
But at the time, it was a cute idea because there was no crime. So you drop a one-man crime wave in the middle of that, and he's and the idea was the Norwegians would become more like him as the series went on, and he would become more Norwegian as the series went on.
Right.
Which is what we did for the 3 years. It's only 24 episodes, but it was the first show on Netflix, and unfortunately, that's nice for the history books, and not so nice because nobody had Netflix. Nobody.
But for the younger folks in the room who watch stream shows constantly, the very first streaming series on Netflix, Lilyhammer.
Yeah.
Number one.
Yeah.
First one. They took a shot with you, man. But you're right. No one had it.
No one had it.
Yeah.
And it was a really ballsy move. I mean,
Yeah.
I salute.
It was.
I salute Ted Sarandos because it was mostly subtitles.
Yeah.
It's all Norwegian except me.
Yeah.
And the premise was, they understand English and I understand Norwegian, but I just don't speak it.
Yeah, right.
Which
right.
actually does happen over there because Norwegian is tough. It's like Klingon. I mean, it's tough. It's tough. But anyway, that was, it was a wonderful, wonderful experience.
I want to talk about the transformation into Silvio. Your fellow actors, and I've met a couple of them over the years. It's always weird to be in a radio station. You open up a elevator door and there's big pussy in front of you, and you're like, whoa. But everybody says the same thing about you is Steve Van Zandt shows up at the set, you get into the trailer, makeup room, and you come out and you are Silvio Dante for the rest of the day. And you don't break character.
Well, no, I'm not a total method guy.
But you stay in it pretty close.
Well,
You come out gangster.
Oh yeah. Yeah, but I had to work from the outside in. I had to do that. I had to be able to look in the mirror and see the guy. If I could see him, I could be him.
I got you.
To this day, I think it's remarkable that actors can look like themselves, and act, I'm like, man, I don't know.
How do you do that?
How do you do that? But it was, easier for me to really, paint this picture of this guy that lives in the past and has a more of a 50s haircut and really romanticizing the old days, when the mob had honor,
Right.
And, weren't ratting each other out every 5 minutes, and it was a bit of a fantasy, of course, and a bit of a throwback. But he was a traditionalist, and so he had to look like a traditionalist.
I watched the episode the other night where I think you were just off the hook. And people don't realize Silvio was not a nice man. And especially when you had to take out Adriana. Listen to that. Listen to that. You are driving in the car with her. You are comforting her. You are saying, why are you crying? Christopher's going to be okay. Everything is all right. You take her into the woods and you put bullets in her head.
It wasn't me. What are you looking at me for? Oh, but seriously, that was the hardest scene.
Oh, I couldn't. How did you get? You had to get psyched up for that one.
That was a hard scene. That was the hardest scene I've ever done. I hate bullies. I mean, I gotta, you can see by my what I go after, right?
But I'll tell you,
I hate
great
bullies,
acting, Steven. Just tremendous.
But I had to put my hands on her, and I know she looks like a tough broad, but she's a girl, man. And you put your hands on her, and you gotta drag her out of the car for 3 hours, over and over again. And she's like, don't take it easy. It's obviously going to be my last scene. and she won. I think she won the.
Yeah, she did. She won an Emmy for that.
Won the Emmy and forgot to thank me, but it's okay. But that's really tough for me because I really hate bullies, and I like men beating up women and all of that stuff. I just hate it, So it was really. You had to really psych yourself up, like you said. Yeah, it's a job, right?
why do we cheer for the bad guy? Why do we like Tony Soprano? Why do we like Michael Corleone? Why do we love Silvio Don? Silvio does that one, in the next episode, we're like, go get him, Sil. Go take somebody. You know, like, why do we love the bad guys? Why, Stone Cold Steve Austin. Why do we love the bad guys so much?
I have people stopping me on the street saying, yeah, Sil, that's the way to do it, boy. That's where she had it coming.
Oh, what?
You know. I'm like, what's the matter with you?
Yeah. I was on the air the next day, and you know, you'd take phone calls from listeners, and they were like, "Oh, she had it coming."
You know,
she had it coming.
I'm like,
you know?
My God.
Yeah.
You know, because we went out of our way not to romanticize these guys, right?
Yeah,
I mean,
right.
you know, it does not look like a great way to make a living, does it?
No.
You know what I mean? So, I mean.
But we love the bad guys.
Well, I think that's you know, it's a bigger issue, but I think it goes all the way back to the whole gangster genre, and to some extent it ties together with the whole cowboy genre. That sort of anti-authoritarian, you know, screw the whole world, screw the rules, you know, fuck all that. Let's you know, we're gonna do what we want to do.
Yeah.
You know what I mean?
Right.
And everybody, you know. Look, the reason why TV shows and movies work so well, in my mind, is, you know, you're seeing things that you can't get in real life, to some extent, right? You know, you're not going to get that great revenge in real life. You know, you're not going to be able to kill the boss that you want to kill, or you know what? It could be violence, it could be sex. I mean, how many people see beautiful naked people in real life, right? I mean, you know, not that many, right? So, you know, put them on the screen. Put them on the screen.
Put them up there.
You know, why not? You know what I mean? Let people see what they don't see in real life. You know, and I think that's, you know, and I think that's part of that thing, you know, because we're all following rules every day. You know what I mean? We're all, you know, working 9 to 5, and you know, we're all trapped in this, you know, rat race. And here's these guys that just like, they're parking wherever they want to park, right?
They say whatever they want to say.
They got a table waiting at the restaurant when they go in. You know,
right.
So, you know, I mean, all those little silly things that people say, that's, you know, let's give it to them. Let's give it to give it to them. You know?
Well, I know James Gandolfini got a phone call one time, and it was a quick phone call, and it was basically mob bosses don't wear shorts, and they hung up. And is that a true story?
I heard that.
Okay.
But I don't know.
Have you ever had someone approach you and say, you know, here's what you should add to your character a little bit?
No, you don't want to get that close.
Oh, okay.
You know,
I gotcha.
you know, you know, you're kind of you're in that world for a while. I mean, we did 7 seasons in 10 years. You know, 10 years. And there's a famous mob restaurant in New York, one of several. And you know, I go there occasionally, you know, kind of observe. And, you know, some of the girlfriends and wives, you know, would take, hey, Silvio, you know, take pictures with you, you know. Yeah. You know, and I would ask, you know, make sure, you know, it's okay. But, you know, after a few times, you know, I'm looking, and the guys are not, you know, I don't feel like they're really enjoying this. You know what I'm saying?
Yeah.
So I stopped going. You know, I mean, you know, it's not like, you know, you can negotiate.
You've already faced machetes in your life.
Exactly.
You don't need this.
I know when it's time to run.
Right.
And you know, you see great. There was a great article where they tapped the phones of some mob social clubs, and they were all trying to figure out who's playing who in the Sopranos. Hey, that's you. You know, Joey. You know, you're playing. You know, they were like seeing plots that happened in their lives.
Oh my
right?
God.
And there was a whole series of articles about it, you know, and David Chase is just making this shit up. He's just making it up.
Yeah.
You know, there's no relationship to real life at all, you know. So, you know, but you want to keep a distance, you know what I mean? You know, you're doing it out of respect, but, you know, you don't want to get too close.
Let's go to your radio life. I was very blessed to do my blues show called Tangled Up in Blues, and then I was, yeah, thanks. But I was the lead-in when your show first came about, before you took over all of Sirius XM, because I think you own like 47 channels now. But the Underground Garage was on commercial station.
Still is.
Yeah. And oh, it still is on station.
Yeah.
And I was the lead-in for it. And I'm telling you what, Steven, as a radio junkie, I love the way you educate us. You'll be telling a story about how this song was used in a movie, or the background of someone who used, and I'll look at the radio seriously, and I feel like a very, very old person, because I look at the radio and I go, no shit, Steve. You know, like, you come up with, do you do the research, or who does? That's all you?
Yeah.
Wow.
Yeah.
You mean Sam in the back doesn't? No? No?
Well, we got other people do research for the other DJs now.
Thank you for the education. Seriously, it's just like
it was just a matter of, when we grew up, radio was an extremely important companion. Now again, we didn't have all the distractions.
Right.
But we had a relationship, man, with our radio station and the DJs. And when AM turned to FM, late 60s, they began to talk more about, who wrote the song and who produced the record, right?
Sure.
And which strengthened the relationship with our DJs.
Right.
That's the one the
Yep.
era you inherited. And I'm like, man, I got to bring that back, I mean, because what happened was the consultants came in, and they chased all the personality out of rock radio and pushed it right into talk radio and sports radio. And guess where the audience went?
Right,
Okay?
right.
They went right to that talk radio and sports radio. Why? Because people want that personality.
Yeah.
They want that relationship with a DJ, So I was determined to bring that back, which we did, and just have a conversation, You're going to learn something. People are so afraid if they play a new record, everybody's going to switch the stations.
Right.
No, you get a relationship. I loved it when somebody turned me on to a new song in the old days, right?
Right.
And people love it when I turn them on to a new song because they trust me. We have a relationship, right? And that changes everything. And I think it's especially important right now.
I do too, man.
And I mean, I'm telling you, radio should make a comeback because. Because of the anxiety and loneliness that is, permeating this generation, I'm telling you, that voice out of the darkness, thing that radio has, and nothing else is like it. No other medium is quite like it, I think kids could use that relationship right now, to be honest. So I'm hoping that radio makes a comeback.
You have so many great quotes, Steven, but my favorite is describing how you came up with the Underground Garage. You have described the format as featuring the bands that influenced the Ramones, the bands that were influenced by the Ramones, and the Ramones. Woo! I love that quote. And it's so true. It is so true. That's what I think about every time I listen to your station. That's what I think about.
Yeah, it's fun connecting the dots. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
I mean, connecting the dots is big with me. That's what we do with our teachrock.org curriculum too. We're constantly connecting the dots for kids. That's what the arts does. That's what the arts adds to science and technology and math, right?
Yeah.
It connects these dots to places where you wouldn't expect, right? And suddenly they're understanding a math problem because we said, figure out, how many times the Beatles played the Cavern Club, and what's the,
That's the math problem. I like it.
You know what I mean?
Yeah.
Whatever it might be. And suddenly, you're connecting those dots because, in the end, as far as the kids go, I feel very strongly, it's much more important to teach kids how to think than what to think. Okay?
Woo! Nice.
Yeah.
Here's next time you need a little research on your show, I'm going to give it to you. The Ramones had a direct tie to Youngstown, Ohio, and that is the fact that, I don't know if you noticed, but all of their sound gear that traveled the entire world came out of Youngstown at a place called Jam Sound with Johnny and Jimmy Markovich. So,
All right.
yeah, that's how connected.
And the Dead Boys, right? When Stiv Bators.
Stiv, yeah, good one.
Very good friend
Yeah.
of mine. Very
Yep.
good friend of mine. Big
But-
loss. Big loss. Big loss.
You said at one time in your life you were walking the streets with your dog. You were broke. You were wondering what the hell happened. Now you're a successful businessman. Projects galore. You own a record label. Like I said, about 47 channels on Sirius XM. You're probably, do you realize that there are folks in this room that have probably Googled Steven Van Zandt net worth? And I was thinking a while ago to pass the plate. We don't need to do that because you're doing really well. All right?
That's all bullshit. That thing, the net worth. Yeah, right. I wish.
But
I'm
seriously, if you look at your life now, Steve, you're doing everything that you've probably ever wanted to do, and anything that you can't, you're probably still designing it in your head.
Oh, there's a lot. There's a lot. I'm not going to get to. Believe me. I mean, my favorite thing I've ever done, I've only done once, which was I found my Broadway show that I did with the Rascals. Once Upon a Dream. I realized that live event, man, the producing a live event on Broadway. We took the entire back wall and made it a screen. It was like a hybrid show, and I filmed the Rascals telling their story. Giant heads, and so I reunited the band. And produced the music, but also we would transport people back to the 60s while they're playing with images on the screen, And then in between songs, the stage would go dark, and they'd come on when I filmed them, explaining what the songs were about.
Sweet.
It was a wonderful new art form I thought I was creating. But that thing about I wrote it, directed, produced it, and you're into the wardrobe and the choreography and the images and the music. That combination of all of the arts that happens in a theatrical performance like that, man. I realized, I thought I wanted to be, Pete Townsend, but I really want to be Diaghilev, I want to be Bob Fosse, And this occurred to me very late in life, too late. So what I enjoy, and I just got off so much on that thing, man.
Yeah.
That I thought, man, I wish I could do this all the time. So I've only done that. I've only done my favorite thing I've ever done. I've only done it once. Yeah. Well, we'll see. I'm hoping for a big fourth quarter.
Steven, I don't want to go home. Sweeter than honey. This time is for real. I ask everybody in this congregation tonight, is there a better song about love gone bad than Love on the Wrong Side of Town? If you don't know the lyrics, I did most of the talking, but you were the one who lied. Bye-bye, baby, our love is tumbling down. I can't be hanging round. It's love on the wrong side of town. Oh, my God, Steven, can you write beautiful songs, man. You write beautiful songs. Did you know when you wrote some of these, you're putting pen down, and you're like, this is something, man.
Well, all you're trying to do in those days, I was just trying to write the traditional soul music and rock soul combination that the Jukes, Southside Johnny was that hybrid of rock and soul. You're right,
Once a juke, always a juke, right? Yeah.
And all I was trying to do was copy my favorite art. Try and write. I'm trying to write a Smokey Robinson song, a Curtis Mayfield song. The Temptations. Four Tops. And so you're comparing yourself to that, which is, what I tell everybody. When, in those master classes, I'm like, don't compare yourself to what's going on now.
Yep.
Okay, go back and compare yourself to the greatest of all time. And that's what I was doing. So. In your mind, my mind, I'm getting there, but I'm not quite there. You know what I mean? I played the fool.
Oh.
It's good. It's not Tears of a Clown. You know what I'm saying?
Okay.
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 That's all I'm saying. So in my mind, I'm like, you're trying to get there, but you're reaching for it.
What's the songwriting? Man, Steven, you bring just so many great memories, and you can paint in a 3.5 minute song. You can paint this beautiful image in everybody's mind, and I thank you for it, man. Seriously.
Oh man, yeah.
I thank you for it. Let me throw some names at you, if you don't mind. Are you okay? Yeah, okay. Is everybody okay?
Yeah.
All right. I should ask Jackie. Jackie runs Youngstown State. Jackie, we all right?
Yeah, I think we got another.
How about Dr. Joe? We okay? I don't want to.
I think we got another 15 minutes.
Yeah, we'll give you.
We do 15 more.
Okay, is that good?
Yeah.
Yeah, okay. All right, beautiful. I'm going to throw some names at you, and you brought up Miles Davis. And I had an experience with Miles Davis leaving one of your shows with Little Stephen and Disciples of Soul. I was so happy to see Miles Davis, and he was not happy to see me.
I'm intrigued.
He was heading to a car. He had to get to a car. And he was hell-bent on getting to this car to get out of it.
Coming out of one of my shows?
No, it was a show up in Cleveland.
Please.
Yeah.
Okay.
If Miles Davis was at your show, man,
come
that
on.
would, yeah. But
That'd be big.
What was Miles like?
Well, he was as tough as his reputation,
Yeah.
He was just a tough guy, and what an honor that was. That's one of the high points of my life.
Nice.
He came in, and at first he's like, I said, well, we were very surprised that he showed up. It was just destiny at work. He had many different sound men through the years. At that moment, he happened to have my old sound man, one of my old sound men. I got the message to him through the sound man. And, most people wouldn't even have the balls to bring it up.
Yeah,
you
right,
know?
right.
But he brought it up, and Miles was like, I'm in, And he comes in, and I was like, let me play the track, And so we had done a log drum, that rhythm, that kind of, we recorded everybody with that basic log drum. And he sat next to me, and and I'm playing him back, and he leans over, he's like, "You want me to play or what?" And I was like, "No, Miles, I want you to produce so I can get some sleep," But then, and you can see in the documentary,
oh, man.
He was just so amazing. I mean, did whatever I asked him to do, and I had written, the part in the intro of the song of Sun City, and in the middle, right? And he played for like 6 minutes. I'm like, I'm not leaving 5.5 minutes of Miles Davis on the floor. I mean,
Yeah, you can't do
forget
that.
it.
Yeah.
So I reunited one of his great bands. I got Herbie Hancock and Ron Carter and Tony Williams to come in and play the Miles track, and Stanley Jordan, who was this crazy guitar player they found in the subway. Yeah, he was discovered in the subway, and he's like a genius guitar player. And so he's on that track on the Sun City album. So they played to Miles, basic track. Yeah. because I only could use,
And
20
you can't
seconds.
let that go. Yeah, you can't let that. Yep.
And I'm like, forget it. I'm not leaving that on the floor.
The influence of the Beatles you've talked about many times. Who was your favorite Beatle? Who is your favorite Beatle? Who was? Is that putting you on the spot, man?
No.
Yeah.
It's growing up, it was George Harrison because, who I never met, unfortunately, never got a chance to meet. Because I personally love the Indian stuff. The 3 Indian songs that he did, my favorites. Really inventing world music, basically.
Right.
With those songs. So I loved that, and I loved his voice in the Beatles. He changed his voice afterwards, unfortunately, but because everybody kept putting him down. But meanwhile, he had a beautiful voice in the Beatles. If you listen to the Inner Light, or Love You Too, or Within You Without You, or Don't Bother Me, or If I Needed Someone, I loved his voice. So he was my favorite. But I liked them all. They were just a real four different parts of making that whole. It was amazing.
Bob Dylan.
Right. Bob is
Have you seen the movie?
Wonderful character. Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, it's good. It's good. But these movies are not really made for me. They're not made for my generation, our generation. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
They're made for younger people who don't know about it.
What's going on?
And that's fine. You know what I mean? The Bob Dylan one, the Bob Marley one, the Jimi Hendrix one.
Yeah. Give them a little history lesson.
They're good. You know what I mean? But you're never going to be quite exactly right because we lived it. But Bob is quite a character. I mean, I've had like 5 or 6 encounters with him, and I put them all in the book. They're all in the book.
Yes, they are, yeah.
Because they're all classic encounters. I mean, he's just such a character. And he was the first one, him and Bruce were the first ones I sent the book to. I said, listen, I'm going to put some intimate conversations in. And, this is not a tell-all book. This is not a how many celebrities can I name book, okay?
Right.
So anything you object to, I'll take it right out, okay? And neither one of them objected. In fact, they both, did blurbs on the Bob Dylan did his second blurb ever on my book cover, and nobody can remember the first. So, they're like, maybe he did something for Allen Ginsberg, in 1967.
Right.
So that was amazing. But I put every encounter in the book because he just such a classic. Starting with right after the Sopranos started, he's in Sweden or Germany, I think it's Sweden, and he invites us to the show. And then I get halfway through the show, the guy comes to me and says, Bob wants you to jam on the encore. So I'm like, I'm not a big jammer, okay, but okay, So
I love this.
Now Bob, there's different tours. He's doing different things. He's kind of, he's famous for not singing the melodies anymore, and but I just love the fact that he's still out there. Okay, I don't care what he does. All right, he can do whatever he wants.
Amen.
Right?
Amen.
We owe him that. We owe him everything. Okay. So, the crowd has been kind of, polite, throughout, And so he announces, well, Steven, and the crowd stands up, right? I was big at the time in Sweden. And they start going crazy, right? So I'm trying to plug in, there was no rehearsal, of course.
Right.
I'm trying to find an amp, and the roadie's trying to help me. And Bob comes over and says, hey, man, hey, I was watching TV, man. And, man, you were wearing a wig. He says, man, I didn't recognize you, And, he's going on and on. Like we're in his living room.
Right before the jam session.
They're going crazy. He's going crazy, right?
And he's having this
I'm trying to plug in. He says, man, you're wearing a wig. Man, it was wild, man. It was wild, I'm like, yeah, Bob, can we discuss this later? Because, you know, the
I need a
crowd, I'm trying to plug. You know.
Oh, God.
So, yeah,
that
so
is
the-
such a great story.
They've been watching Sopranos on the tour bus, you know. He's a funny guy. He's a funny guy.
Oh, my goodness. When you put together the book, and congratulations, and I told you a while ago, it has become a part of my family now. My wife has read it twice, and you are on audiobook. And I walk into the house, and I used to hear Van Morrison playing or Tom Waits playing. Now it's little Steven on loop. You know, we'll sit down at a family dinner, and she'll say, "Well, this is what little Steven thinks." You know, did you?
Sorry about that.
And, but you know something? I'm a believer. I am a disciple. I am a disciple, my man. Did you keep a journal, or how did you?
No, I wish I would.
Is that all memory? What did you do?
Are you kidding me? That's like 10%. I lost 90% of it. I mean, you know. I mean, I wish I kept it. One of my big regrets was not keeping a journal, because it would have been really interesting. That transition into politics was just a fascinating trip, and I wish I kept the journal. I really do. So, you know, I remembered, you know, most of it. I guess some of it, but you know, a lot got lost through the, you know. It's not, the brain ain't working like it used to.
It's a phenomenal read, Stephen. Phenomenal, man. Yeah. And it deserves all the accolades. It is a tremendous book.
No, like I said, I wanted it to be useful, you know?
Yeah.
And I mean, you know, I wanted it to practically be like a reference book, you know what I mean?
Yeah, it is.
You know, when you're looking up something, you know, I wanted to, you know, because, you know, what else, you know, what good is it if not, you know? So that's how I feel. Yeah.
Please, folks, if you haven't yet, pick it up and you will absolutely love it. You will absolutely love it. I was asked a little while ago to comment on the Rock and Roll Hall of Fame and the groups that are in the Rock Hall that should not be in the Rock Hall. And I could not comment on that or write anything on that, because I figure if you are in any kind of Hall of Fame, you deserve to be there. I might not like whatever, but you have done something good in your life to be in a Hall of Fame. So I would never knock anybody that's currently in any Hall of Fame. But I like to talk about the ones who have not made it yet. And I know how involved you are. And my big three, and I'm sure you have more of them. By the way, Tommy James, I did an interview with him. Little Steven is doing such a major push to get Tommy James in, and he appreciates it so much. He appreciates it so much. He brought up your name probably 2 or 3 times. But Jay Giles' band, the original punk in my life is Warren Zevon. And I think one of the most incredible voices in music history by the name of Joe Cocker. Those are my 3. What do we have to do, Stephen?
That's a good 3. That's a good 3. It's a long line, man. That's all I can tell you. It's a long line. It's a long line.
And I know you get bombarded with it all the time. Because
And Jay Giles is one of mine. 5 years in a row, I got him on. Brought him up. Joe Cocker is one of mine. This year, Bad Company is one of mine. Paul Rogers. There's a long line. I mean, Junior Walker and the All Stars. I mean, arguably the greatest sax player ever. Okay, I mean, people don't, they take his sax playing for granted. Amazing. Greatest rockabilly, group of all time, rock and roll trio. Johnny Burnett and the Rock and Roll Trio, greatest rockabilly group ever. Ever. So I mean, there's a long list. Delaney and Bonnie, who started an entire Southern trend. That entire Southern thing started with Delaney and Bonnie. you know, you get who you can get in, and you try. There's like whatever it is, 35 of us, 40 of us.
Yeah.
Each comes with 2 names, and they pretty much all should be in. And we got to vote it down to 15. Okay, so that 80 turns to 15 by the time we leave the room.
That's what I don't think a lot of folks understand how this. So there's
like a a nominating committee of I don't know, 35 or 40 of us.
okay, and you
Right.
all throw in 2 names.
Everybody has 2 names, and they make the case for those 2 names.
Okay.
And that becomes whatever that is, 70, 80, and then we vote until it gets down to 15,
Okay.
and then that gets voted down to 5 by the general
I
public.
got you.
It's tough to get in, man.
Yeah.
It's tough to get in, So there's a long line of people that deserve to be in. I mean, I got 50 on my list.
Yeah.
So, but Jay Giles right at the top. Joe Cocker, Bad Company. I tried combining Bad Company and Free because 2 of the same members.
two, yeah.
And Simon's still with us, also with Paul Rogers. Procol Harum, I mean, one of the greatest groups of all time.
Yeah.
I mean, but nobody has seen them now. Nobody's old enough to have seen them. But I mean, Robin Trower, B.J. Wilson, come on,
Let's, I know we only have a few minutes left here, folks, but let's get to the legendary E Street Band. And Steven, I know you realize this. You guys have been one of the most exciting touring bands in the history of music, but you're really, really boring. And what I mean by that is no drug issues, no rehab, no P. Diddy parties. You guys...
We weren't invited.
Just hard work, dedication, drive, spirit, belief. How did this all come together? You had 2 band members, and Clarence and Dan, who passed away from health issues. Just you guys are exactly what everybody is looking for in a marriage.
Well, and part of a good marriage is staying apart. I mean, you come together when you come together, and then stay apart. Look, it's completely due to when we grew up. Again, growing up when we did, with the British invasion, making us want to do this for a living.
Yeah.
And comparing yourself to the Beatles and Rolling Stones and the Who and the Kinks and the Yardbirds, and the Byrds and Bob Dylan, in their prime, okay? And that's what that's what you compare yourself to. And so we're never going to get there, okay? We're never going to get there. But we're going to keep trying, you know what I mean?
Yeah.
Keep trying. So every time we come out, now this last tour was one of the most interesting because we were away 7 years.
Right,
You know? So everybody was a little bit concerned, the audience didn't know what to expect, I'm sure, And it's captured in that new documentary. They did a new documentary, right? Road Diary.
Yeah, right.
know.
Really
Yeah,
well done.
yeah.
Really well done.
Yeah, Tom Zimney. And by the way, the E Street and my lifelong baritone sax player Eddie Mannion is in the house tonight somewhere.
Oh, hey!
We were. I was just, I'm sure the audience was like, look, they're going to enjoy it no matter what because the songs are the songs. But are these guys getting too old to do this or what, right? And they're a legitimate question. So I wanted to make sure when we came out for this last tour, we came out like a hurricane,
Yeah.
which we did.
Yeah, baby.
You know.
Yeah.
to honor the people that we, that we respected and grew up with. You know what I mean? Now it's just a little, we're just kind of taking what we saw and experienced and turning it into the modern version of it. Because when I saw the Beatles, they played for 26 minutes. The Stones played for about 35 minutes. Back then. So we turned that into 3 hours. But the idea is to continue to, I mean, we had people coming up, younger celebrities coming up to us and say, we came to the show because we heard you play live. You know what I mean? Now, who saw that becoming a thing?
Yeah.
You came because we play live? Well, guess what? A lot of people are not playing live, And so, we've become this novelty act, this sort of,
Come see the band that plays live.
come on.
Oh, man.
The two-headed, monster and the bearded lady and the band that plays live.
Yeah.
Interesting.
Steve, if you could just pull back the curtain, last question. When it comes to being on tour with the E Street Band, and say you're playing a soccer stadium in Italy, what is a day like? What time does it start for you? What time does it end for you? Give me you have a show that night in Sicily. What's a day like?
It depends on...
So we all understand it.
Well, in an ideal world, which is hardly the case anymore, you try to make the show the middle of your day, which is something that people don't quite understand. They think rock and rollers are just lazy, sleeping late. But ideally, you're already in the town, and you sleep till 12, 1, 2, 3 o'clock.
Okay.
To make the show in the middle of your day, and then you stay up till 6, 7 in the morning, right? To maximize your energy, right? But that's these days, I'm doing lots of things. I'm doing things. It might be a book appearance. It might be an education appearance. It might be visiting one of my radio affiliates. And then I do a meet and greet before every show for my foundation, right? So, luckily, most of our stuff is sold out. So Bruce is very kind to give my foundation a bunch of tickets. And, they put a premium on the tickets because it's the only place you can get it. And I will do a meet and greet like I did tonight, You take pictures with people and they get a chance to see the show. And last tour, I raised my foundation like $2 million,
Oh, my
Yeah.
goodness.
Now,
Wow. Nice.
well, smart guys put the money in their pockets,
Yeah.
Right,
Just
to keep perspective
Oh,
here,
yeah.
But I'm allergic to money, actually. So anyway, so you tend to, doing, it might be meetings, because you kind of stay busy these days doing something. Hard Rock Cafe was one of my sponsors for many years, so I would sometimes do a DJ, job on the night off, with them. It could be anything, but I tend to do whatever I got to do. I do it before the show.
Okay.
After the show, the office is closed. You know what I mean? I'm done. And that's when I usually, I'll go out with friends or, have a nice quiet dinner afterwards. But before that, I'm doing a meet and greet right up until showtime. And meetings during the day usually, or sometimes, traveling, But so you try and fit in as much as you can.
Yeah.
So.
You get every drop out of the day.
Yeah.
Yeah, you do. And I know you've had a long day today, and all I can say is, Steven Van Zandt, thank you so much.
Thank you. Thank you.
I want to thank the folks from Youngstown State. I want to thank it's right here. I want to thank Jackie, Dr. Joe. Thank you, everybody. Have a beautiful night. God bless, and I love Youngstown State University.